Hey, this is Astro Steve, and we're going to start a new series on the planets. Okay, the planets are a very important part of astrology. If it wasn't for the planets, well then guess what? We wouldn't have astrology. Now, before we move on, okay, I just want to let everybody know, the way I do astrology is quite different than what a lot of other people do. What I do is I take aspects of Western astrology and Vedic astrology and combine them together. I do have a heavier weight on Vedic astrology, but I found that the location of the planets in Western astrology are accurate. Alright? Now, what I do is basically I keep the location of the planets that you have in Western astrology. I use the exact same house system in Vedic astrology. I do aspects as they do in Vedic astrology, and there's a lot of concepts from Vedic astrology that I apply into. I do not use in my interpretations Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, because these are planets that do not impact us personally. They impact us as a society, okay? And we'll eventually get to those planets later on, okay? But when I'm looking at your personal horoscope birth chart, first I look at your Western astrology birth chart, and I manipulate it to be in the way that it is in Vedic astrology, okay? Use the same exact positions, except I use the Vedic astrology house system, which is called the equal house system. And we'll again get into the houses in our next series of videos. Okay? I have found this to be much more accurate. Okay? Much more accurate than what they use in Western astrology, where they have, sometimes you can have one planet ruling two houses. Okay? So I do it a little bit differently. Some people may argue with the way I do astrology, but I have found it in all of my interpretations thus far up to this particular point to be actually very true. So again, I guess I'm a little bit different that way. So again, there are actually 9 planets that we really need to know, okay, and we need to meet them, okay. There's 3 planets that I will introduce. Again, it's Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Those we will kind of touch upon and talk a little bit about, but really it's 9 planets, 2 of which aren't really planets, okay, but these are 9 important aspects, or planets that we need to meet. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and then we have Rahu and Ketu, which are the nodes of the Moon. Okay, very important. Okay, Western astrology does not look at Rahu and Ketu as important points in your chart, but they really are important points in your chart. So we'll again get to what those planets mean, or what those they're not really planets. They're actually again nodes of the Moon. What they mean in your personal chart. So again, we'll eventually get to all this, and then you have what are called. And again, this is kind of an introduction to the planets, and we're also going to talk about the Sun in this video as well. You have what are called malefic planets, and you have what are called benefic planets. Okay, and this is again another basic concept that is used in Vedic astrology, and that is not used in Western. Malefic planets are Venus, Mercury, Moon, and I might be missing one more, Jupiter. Okay, so you have Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter. Okay, those are the 4 malefic planets. Then you have those were the benefic planets. Now you have the malefic planets. Malefic planets are Sun, Mars, and Saturn. Okay, Sun, Mars, and Saturn. Okay? However, they're not always malefic. Not always. They can be, but they're not always malefic. They can produce good results. Okay? They can produce good results. And benefic planets may not always be good. They can produce bad results, but for the most part, these planets are good, are what you really want to look at in your chart. Okay? And then you have Rahu and Ketu, which are kind of neutral. Okay? They can't, in certain situations, they can be benefic or they can be malefic. Okay? So that is basically the kind of, introduction, kind of what all the planets are about. So now we're going to get to what we're actually going to talk about in this video, which is about the sun. Okay? Now, in Western astrology and online and in the newspapers and in the magazines, everybody puts so much emphasis on your sun. Everybody thinks that the sun is what makes up your personality. The sun does not make up your personality. The sun basically is just it's just what do you take pride in? What is your ego? Okay? Do you absolutely love, or what is it that you really urge to do? Okay? You may not necessarily have this in your life, but what do you take pride in? Okay? So again, I'll give you a little bit of an example. Let's say your sun is in, let's say, Taurus. Okay? If your sun is in Taurus, that means you take pride in stability. You take pride in, being practical with money. You take pride in, the pleasures of life, the finer things in life. Does it necessarily mean that this is your personality? Absolutely not. Okay? But again, this can be brought out if you have, certain planets in whether it's water signs or earth signs. This could be really brought out much more. But let's say if you have a lot of signs in fire and air, well, this will be mainly kept within you, and it won't be brought out that easily. Okay? It's very, very tricky. And also, you have what are called cusps, and any planet could be on a cusp. Okay? It's the last degree and the first degree of a sign, because each zodiac sign is 30 degrees long. So let's say if you're at 1 degree Taurus, okay, that means whatever planet goes through here, but especially your sun and your moon, but also your Mercury, your Venus, and your Mars. Those are also other important planets if they're in a cusp. But particularly your sun and your moon, what will end up happening is if these go on a cusp, what will end up happening is you'll have some characteristics of the previous sign and some characteristics of the sign that that it's actually in. Okay? Now, depending upon, like, let's say you have a lot of planets in air signs, okay, and your sun is officially in Taurus, 1 degree Taurus, what'll actually end up happening is if you have a lot of planets in air signs or in fire signs, what will end up happening is the weight will be brought to the other side of the cusp, which would be towards your Aries side of the cusp, because again, the first degree of a sign or the last degree. So what'll end up happening is although your sun sign is in Taurus, or although your moon is in Taurus, really the characteristics of that Aries side is actually brought out more because of so many planets, let's say, being in a particular air sign or fire sign. This is very important because a lot of people overlook cusps. And again, it can be a little bit more tricky if you have, a cusp and you have kind of mixed planets. So like some planets in each different sign, and you don't have much of one particular sign in your chart. Okay? But this is it's still very important. It can show that you have, just additional characteristics in you. Alright? So there's just so much. Okay? But the sun is what you take pride in. Sun is your ego. It also represents your father. It represents your relationship with your father. So if your sun sign is placed very well in your chart, this can indicate that you have a very good relationship with your father. This can indicate that your relationship is really brought out well. Okay? If your sun sign is placed badly, this can indicate a very negative relationship with your father. Okay? So this is, again, very important. Okay? The location of your sun. Alright? Now again, the sun isn't everything. It's not the way you think. It's not the way you feel. It's not your emotions. Alright? It's not how you take things in intellectually. None of this. This is just your pride. It is your soul. Okay? And does your soul, is your soul in charge of your emotions? No. Your soul is just your inner self, your inner core. Okay? And again, sometimes your inner core can be brought out well and you can really connect with it. Sometimes you're not all that connected with it because you have a lot of planets in other signs that's blocking that connection to your soul. Okay? And what you really need to do is, in order to get closer to your sun sign or get closer to what your soul is, you want to really, you sort of want to kind of connect with it in some way. You might want to meditate, just urging to get that soul, your soul characteristics out there. Okay? But again, your soul isn't everything. Okay? It is not the way we think. It is not the way we feel. And again, that is in our next video, okay, which will be all about the moon. But again, if you have any questions, comments, go ahead and comment below. And again, you can subscribe below as well if you like the information that I give. And again, and that's it for the sun. But in our next video, we're going to talk all about moon.